All right, I believe we are live. So it's Sunday. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about the housing crisis, and it won't be bad news. I want to talk about some of the potentials we're going to be seeing possibly for 2022. And just in case everybody's wondering, we're going to be specifically focusing on low income housing, Section 8, and so on. Okay. So I understand we're talking about build back better under Biden's plan and the several trillion dollars that are out there and waiting to possibly be approved. But I'm only going to be focusing on that aspect because some people have asked me, what's going on? It's just we're not focusing on vouchers and so on. So I think right now we had one Democrat, Joe Manchin. He decided that he wasn't favorable for the vote for this particular act, and so that stalled it. And also, they reduced the Build Back Better Act for the funding from 3 trillion to a 1.5 trillion. So I think what's going to happen is they have to come to a consensus and definitely include this particular senator. And when they do so, we'll be able to discuss a little bit more about what's going to happen with this plan. So I've made some notes, and I'm going to talk to you all about it real quick for this specific area. Well, I was hoping that these notes would be a little bit easier to read. Okay, so what's going to end up happening is this is going to be probably the single largest and most comprehensive investment in affordable housing history. So for many of you, as you may know, affordable housing, low income housing, and so on since 2000 has been the generating. We haven't built much, and what's being built is not that affordable. So I can definitely tell you that we have reduced the stockpile of housing that's available for people that are low income and seniors and disabled by almost 74%. I don't know how accurate that number is. I'm pulling it from certain polls and consensus. But, anyways, the framework will enable the construction and rehabilitation and improvement of more than 1 million affordable homes. They'll also be boosting the housing supply and reducing prices. Well, I guess the pricing pressure for renters and homeowners. Now, what I want to do is talk to you a little bit about, a lot of you are interested in Section 8 vouchers and low income housing. I think when we look at that as a whole, one of the bigger issues that's happening in the country is we dumped a lot of money into the economy, obviously, to save things from the viruses. And so it caused the housing market to heat up because there were a lot of incentive to buy homes. With that being said, you have these big metropolitan areas, and there's only a limited amount of land. So, what really drives this wild 20 and 30% market jump for affordable housing, and why are these rents going up? Well, it's simple. Builders are running out of land, affordable land, so their cost goes up. And a lot of this now has moved from middle class type housing to where it's going, everything being built is with amenities. In other words, it's for people that have a great deal of money and resources. So the builders obviously want to make money. I understand that perspective, but at the same time, we're not building enough affordable housing for people that simply don't make that aren't engineers, lawyers, and doctors. Moving back, one of the bigger stockpiles that we're missing is going to be in all of rural communities, and that's a big portion of America. In every state, we have a vast number of counties that are not in metropolitan areas, and there's virtually no low income housing that's really been built in most of those areas for quite a while. Um, I think that under the plan, if passed, they're going to be also looking at some other healthier options for energy efficiency. And so I know a lot of affordable housing was built 20 years ago, and those things were not in consideration. In other words, a lot of these, everything from insulation, heating, air, and so on has been pretty much outdated. And so there's a struggle there to even maintain utilities for very low income people. So my perspective, basically, from what the White House is saying of this is, if it does pass, then there's an opportunity where we may be able to stimulate the market to build some more affordable housing for everybody. It doesn't mean specifically just low income people or those that carry vouchers or doing subsidies and so on. But I think that if this passes, it would be a good chance to rebuild part of the stockpile because we can't have all expensive housing. It's just not going to be the best situation. And we have a very whittled down program for those of you that are trying to utilize your vouchers to purchase homes. And so that ends up going back to Fannie Mae and Fannie Mac. And I've worked with a lot of different clients in that regard. So Now let's get into a few introductions before we get a little further in the video. I am Jay. I am the owner of Section8Consulting.com. I work with hundreds of landlords and thousands of clients every year. Most people know me by reputation on YouTube and also Google. I rank number one in both. And I work with a lot of people. Roughly 93% of the time, I'm successful. Sometimes those numbers wane around 90%. Sometimes we have situations where around 10% of the people that I work with, it goes nowhere. We don't live in a perfect world, so I can't deliver perfect results. And of course, I'm not unaccustomed to making mistakes myself. So that being said, I want to discuss the particular person that shot down this particular act. So we're talking about Build Back Better, and I want to discuss some of the disconnects that we have in America. Now, I understand there's differences between Republicans and Democrats. That is what it is. I don't stand on either political side, but I just want to mention this. So we talk about Mr. Manchin, which is a Democrat that shot down solely. I think it was his vote that shot it down. This is a man that makes around 200,000 a year. He owns 61 properties. Okay, so when you look at that, and I don't want to disparage him, but I mean, sucking on a cigar, sipping on whiskey, and your $1 million home making 200,000 a year, do you really think that you're that connected to your constituents and your voter base enough so to blow down a $2 to $3 trillion plan that doesn't just affect Section 8 homeowners and low income people? The Build Back Better program deals with a whole lot of things that have nothing to do with Section 8. And I'm not going to get deeply into that. But I mean, this is a crash course in the middle of a pandemic where a lot of people have gone from medium class and have been zeroed out to zero class, no job, lost the home, couldn't pay the mortgage, and now thus they're entering the spectrum of being in Section 8 housing and other things. I've had several people reach out to me recently that were former employees of housing authorities here in America, and I've heard some pretty compelling stories in regards to that. So I'm going to take a look at a few comments here. I know you guys like to comment. Also, there's a poll up there. You're welcome to use it. So this is a live chat. And in live chat, you can ask questions and you can say whatever you like as long as it's reasonable. And there's also a poll in this live chat. So I think if you're on a phone or a computer, or laptop, and so on, you're able to live chat. So it looks like 67% of the people think the video is good, and 33% think it's okay. As of so far, nobody thinks it's bad. So that is what it is, I guess. We'll find out later. Maybe somebody will dislike the video. I'm okay with that. Letitia H, welcome. Good to see you again. Queen Joe says, hello, how are you? Gail Resources, welcome back to the channel. Just by the way, Gail's been a long-standing member of the channel, and I don't pay her to be here. She's always just showing up and showing a little gratitude and watching the videos. So one of the other things I'd like to talk about is if we're able to pass this, then I think the great things will happen all the way around, whether you're high class, middle class, or low income, because with the additional money and funding, we might be able to cool off the housing market right now that's in such an insane mode. As an example, for those of you that are dealing in Section 8 and looking for that type of housing, the state of California has been crushed by a housing crisis. Arizona has been crushed by that crisis, and Florida is quickly arriving at that point. And I think that Florida was on the way for a long time because everybody likes to go there to retire. And I think at this point, the state has just got more people than they can accommodate in the metropolitan areas, thus creating a situation. And as people get older, they become lower income. Why? Because they're not working their jobs that they were working when they were in the workforce. So they're on a fixed income, thus making them low income. That's the reality. A lot of people think that Section 8 and low income housing is about people that just want to leech off the system, but it's not in reality what that is. A lot of people that I deal with have worked all their life, and unfortunately, the benefit of working and paying taxes is simply not sufficient to be able to make it to retirement when people are living up to 116 years old. Some people simply don't have money. In this country, it's been through a lot of different things already. We went through 9/11. We had Hurricane Katrina wiped out, flooded the whole city. We've seen a lot of different things play out. And then we have this pandemic that seems to be persistent, variation after variation and variant after variant, and trying to work through that. So this nation has been through a lot in the last 20 years. And one of the things that's heavily being affected is people's ability to pay their mortgages, to be able to pay their rent, keep their jobs. Look, the China and India and their ability to send products to the U.S., has become very difficult. And so now small businesses that depend on all those products are not able to get them. And so a lot of people are being crushed out of their job, including business owners. Anyways, just a light perspective across the international market that everybody in some ways being affected, unless you're probably making a great deal of money or, you're a married couple with good professional jobs. So one other thing I'll say is right now I've noticed a real big spike, and I think we anticipated this back in 2021 around December, November, December. I talked to a lot of clients and people that were members of this channel and so on. That at the current pace we were going, with people becoming sick and then the unstable job market, which is pretty bad right now, in my opinion. Okay, that housing authorities and those people that work at the housing authority we're not going to be working there. So a lot of housing authorities have lost half their staff, the other half are working at home. The amount of people that are seeking low income housing, affordable housing, and Section 8 vouchers has increased by a magnitude of 100. I mean, it's absurd. I mean, there's a greater demand than there ever was in the history of having this program 40, 50 years than there is housing available. So what I'm finding is housing authorities are turning off their phones again. You remember I had talked extensively about that in a prior video in 2020. The fact that nobody was answering phones, the vouchers dried up, and people just weren't getting anything. And we appear to be reaching that point again, where despite new federal funding for the new year and other things, we're still struggling in a market and trying to get through the system as best we can. And one of the consequences of all this is those of you that are seeking other options to subsidize your money, whether it's fixed income or income from a job through housing, can't get it, or it's a perilous project to do so. So that's a lot of the cases I'm dealing with right now. I've had to tell clients, compared to last year during the COVID spike, I was working 18-hour days on cases for most of the year to the point it affected my health. And then this year, we're quickly arriving at that situation all over again. The January through March spike, and then, of course, summer, and then again around October, where the number of people that have given up or can't get through, utilize the system adequately enough or quickly enough or looking out for help. And there's not much out there. There's not a lot of consultants left in the market. I can only think of about three, maybe five legitimate sources, most of which would rather be on CNN or Fox News and do consulting that way. Nobody really wants to sit on the phone 30 minutes, work on actual casework. So, that's how it goes. So there aren't a lot of Indians left in the tribe when it comes to this. No offense to our American Indians, but so beyond that, I think that there will be a cooling off period, and I think we're just trying to survive January. I think that things will start to pick up and get better for February, especially for those of you that are looking for results from housing authorities and potentially to port or move to different states. What I'm seeing a lot of family and clients do at this point is if you're in a state that's inundated where the market's overheated, you can't use your voucher, you're running out of time, having to port people. A system with a portability process to get across the nation to other states, and I'm finding that a lot of people are going back to live in other states where they may have relative children or grandparents because it's better to take and sometimes utilize the system in near friends and family where you have a system of support. The last thing you want to do is pack your things up in a U-Haul, transverse the whole nation, and then end up not knowing anybody there, and so it makes it a very scary deal. I've got a lady right now, and just here's a good example of some of the extreme cases. I've got a lady that's in a trailer. The roof caved in. It's minus 17 where she is. Okay, half the things in her house are sparking and about to explode. That's just one case. I've talked about other cases where a lady got in a situation where the person she cares about, he decided to wield a knife and he raked off half her fingers. Okay. Another case where you're talking about parents with over 10 children living in tents in the woods. Okay. And another case where you have a woman that's in her 80s in a homeless shelter rotting to death because the person that's supposed to be the caseworker there has 300 cases and they've barely even obtained their own GED. In other words, this person has no formal training, and it makes little difference to that person that's playing pretend as a counselor, a supposed caseworker, whether anybody ever gets anything. I mean, our job is just simply there to have an open door and to yield very little results. I've warned a lot of you guys about running to homeless shelters and expecting those social workers and caseworkers that say they are to yield any results. And then we look at a further program, which is 211 information line, 311 information line for those of you that are East Coast, West Coast, Southern states. These information lines are, armed by ordinary people. Half of them barely have computer literacy. Their only objective is to connect you to another phone number, which may or may not work. I've talked extensively about that. You would have a better training if you were selling $1 perfume. You remember back in the 80s when they were selling perfume at a gas station, stuff like that, and you'd go, well, anyways. So that's another thing we constantly battle. They're trying to funnel a lot of people through CES, which is the Coordinated Entry System, COC. Now these two programs afford vouchers like rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing. So I'm constantly having to have my clients to be able to dodge the 211 and 311 because it really doesn't lead anywhere. It's almost like a fantastic joke. It's like driving down a road that you know that's going to dead end. So trying to find coordinated entry as a direct resource. And a lot of you guys, we've been discussing how to utilize county to county referrals. If you know that you're involved in a case where somebody's acted against you in a criminal level and it's being prosecuted by the district attorney's office, then the ultimate goal is if it affected you and your housing, then we could get a referral from the district attorney's office to the housing authority, county to county. You see my point? Those are very powerful resources. Those of you that are dealing with mental illness and so on, or having it treated or getting through it, okay? In those situations, if you're receiving care through a county hospital, okay, staffed, owned, or financed by the county or the state, then those referrals from therapists, counselors, social workers, and so on there are very powerful referrals to the housing authority. Why? Because it's a county to county referral. There are many situations where you can expedite this outside of the very bland and ordinary process you deal with dealing with a housing authority. Another thing I should warn clients of is, a lot of we've always talked about not interpreting information when you speak to housing authorities. It is not their job to teach you anything. They're not going to hand out pamphlets. They're not required to be pleasant or even nice to you. And so I think that a lot of clients run into that ramification and talking with them, and they don't understand why they can't get a lot more answers other than the basic because it's designed that way. And those people don't have time. The good housing authority employees that eventually work there either quit or they get damaged by bad clients that may be suffering from mental illness, drug addiction, and other issues. And so if it's just like putting a good prison guard into prison, they start out nice until the inmates do something bad enough that turns them where they no longer emotionally care about their job. So there's a great strain on the system, even inside the housing authority. I've spoke widely against housing authorities, their employees, and how they treat people, but I want to give another perspective of what they're dealing with, the sheer amount of stuff they have to do, and then they're trying to survive the system now, not from working in a housing authority where they have access to back office people like a director of programs, but they're dealing. They're at home in their pajamas, working on a computer, trying to process cases, and they don't really have a lot of resources to pull on. A lot of housing authority employees have not had much formal training in the policy and procedure. So whenever something sticky rolls up, they usually have to get consensus from somebody else in the building that's been doing it much longer. So again, I'm not trying to defend the housing authority. I'm just trying to say that we should view this from many different perspectives. And yes, I'm across the bridge on everything right now in this video, but I think it's important we talk about a little bit of everything, sample the whole buffet before we arrive at conclusions. Brent C., welcome to the channel. Do you help with setting up a home or an apartment complex loan? Brent C., it sounds like you're a landlord and you're possibly deciding to get into being a Section 8 landlord, if I'm interpreting your information correctly. Yes, I work with several hundred landlords. Not all at the same time, but I consult with a lot of landlords from anything from a few units all the way up to 500. So, yes, I'd say reach out to me. If that wasn't the intent of what you meant, Brent, and you're just trying to get assistance or trying to navigate how to get low income housing, subsidies, and so on, Same thing. I work with a lot of clients, and I work in all 50 states. A lot of you are at the presence of mind of thinking because I live in Texas, I only know that system. I probably dealt with nearly every housing authority in America, except for the ones that are in extreme rural areas. And trust me, I've dealt with small towns that literally have a house, a little old 50s home with one little old lady in there doing cases. You see what I'm saying? So not every housing authority is a monopoly like out in LA or New York. There's lots of housing authorities which they're operating literally out of a one-bedroom house. You see my point? So in the comments, I also see Joe Carr. Hey, Joe, how are you this afternoon? So basically, again, we are being screwed by the representatives because they make more from lobbyists and their investments. I got to be frank with you, Joe. I don't have a great deal of political experience. I only know in this particular case, somebody didn't vote, it didn't go through, and that is what it is. And like a lot of decisions that are being made, we don't have an even mixture of people from different backgrounds. So when we only have wealthy old people making decisions when they're pulling in $200,000-$300,000 checks, I'm not sure that would adequately represent everybody in a big city. That's the problem. We have a very poor mixture in our political system. We need to do better and be able to represent all people, no matter how much money they have. Now that's futuristic thinking, but that's me. So y'all can take it for what it's worth. So I think as we start leaving into this, as we start to get into spring, there's a potential this will pass and things will happen. But here's the secondary issue. It takes time to process paperwork. We've seen the bureaucracy happen before. What happened when the pandemic first hit? We were giving out trillions of dollars to fix everything, right? Well, only 6% of all funding from that program back in 2020 actually got dispersed. All of it was pulled back and then used on roads. In other words, we made such a big mess of it that virtually nobody got assistance for rent or anything else. And so it did absolutely no good. So I do have my concerns with this being a disaster if it does get passed, and who will actually be able to do it. Look, most people that are suffering low incomes and fixed incomes do not have a $4,000 filing cabinet and 20 hours a day to sit there and articulate and meticulously organize every bullshit document they want. You know, it's almost as if it's designed as if you've got to be a doctor or a lawyer just to get through part of the stringent application process, knowing that most of these are mothers with children and so on. They barely have time to work at their job, much less sit there and meticulously organize 28 different documents these idiots want. So bureaucracy at its best in these programs. So if it does roll out, my concerns is it's only going to benefit those people that have the resources to organize and orchestrate to get the stuff. That the people that are at the bottom of the chain and smaller businesses, probably by virtue, will get very little out of this. And will it actually come to fruition? I certainly hope so. We've dumped a lot of money into homeless shelters, and what did we learn from that? It doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. We constantly pour money into that. They ain't done. They ain't fixed jack. So I'm at a point where people are losing their housing and ending up in homeless shelters. Well, in 100 years, it hasn't fixed anything. We still got people in tents on the street. So the system doesn't work, and we keep pouring millions. I'm watching homeless shelters, man. They got people living in squalor, and they're living in these shelters and they're being fed 5-day old food and given trash clothing while the good stuff's being sold, and we continue to dump money into these idiotic buildings. Look, if you want to house people in a gymnasium, there's got to be a better way to do this. So I'm a big advocate against homeless shelters. I think there should be a different solution when sometimes people reach that. So I'm bringing that up as well. I realize that is part of housing, and it's a dead end road. We have counselors that have zero education. They just got their GED out the bubblegum machine, and they're supposed to be the one in charge of 300 people in a homeless shelter to successfully get them, step them up to a voucher or get low income housing. That's an absolute absurdity. It never works, and neither does a rodeo clown doing the job. You know how many times I've had nonprofits that are receiving federal funds and other things call and say, "Hey, you know what? We got about 60 cases. We prefer just to collect the money. Can we just hire you to work on the cases?" In other words, it's more elegant for them to profit from it than it is for them to actually do the fucking job that they actually solicit being a nonprofit. So I'm not fooled by nonprofits and the way that it goes. So y'all have to excuse the profanities, but let's just be honest. That's what it is. Anyways, now that we've addressed that and we talked a little bit about the housing market, I hope it does come to fruition. And I think for the most part, it will play a good, important role if we have the right people in charge of it in each city and county. I also think that housing authorities that are not answering the phone and not assisting people are getting a little bit better. And I think by March, this should come wrap up. But we never know. Another variant could hit, and then the economy takes another swing. And so, I always have my concerns. It's never stopped me from doing my job, and it's never stopped my clients from getting what they need. But we're having to do things that we never imagined prior to this pandemic, moving people across different states and everything else just to find a place where the housing is actually affordable. A lot of people are winning vouchers because they're handing them out like candy now. But here's the problem with handing out vouchers. If you willfully know that your housing authority is printing vouchers like they're coupons, but you know that no landlord is going to have a property that can afford the rent reasonableness that you're requesting, then that's a fantastic joke. And I'm seeing that play out in major cities. Oh, we've got Seattle's a great example. 1,400 vouchers. Those things are worthless. They're worthless because nobody can actually use them. There's no landlord that wants them. It's not enough. Nobody's going to rent their home at a discount. It doesn't even come close, and plus the hassle built into it. So I think that at some point we're going to have to rebuild the system or either get rid of it, okay? Because it's not, it hasn't worked. It barely worked when it came out. It was fraught with fraud. Now it's generation after generation and president after president stacking new rules, policies, and procedures, and it's a mangled mess of U.S. Code, Title 24, and then every housing authority operating in a different fashion. They're taking a boilerplate copy of this information from HUD itself, and then they're converting it to what works for their economy, but they're also putting special stipulation into it, and some of the stipulations are just ridiculous. You see my point? So we have a very mangled system of doing this, and it's highly ineffective, and it's really just flushing money down the toilet. And again, that's my opinion, but I've been there long enough to know, to look you straight in the eyes and tell you that. So, but when March arrives, I believe we're going to be able to process cases much quicker. Those that are working with me, and so on. I also think we'll return to some normalcy. I think that certain states are going to become an impossibility for the next decade. I think that exclusionary, when we look at this, that the state of Florida in the future is going to be an impossibility to get reasonable housing. California will be an impossibility, and Arizona is definitely at the tipping point. Now, am I saying you can't get anything there? No, I'm just saying that those states are the most affected right now. New Mexico may be falling in that line soon, and I got to tell you, from Virginia up the East Coast, there are some problems. Maryland, in particular, Maryland likes to do things a little bit different than all of our states, and so there's so many housing authorities there, but the way they're doing things there is questionable. Okay, it's questionable. It's old business. It's still being presented in the new age, and I don't think there's a lot of oversight. But I think there's also a lot of people there that really want to do their job well. So there's so many opinions, but I can't back some of them. So they'll just remain opinions. Okay, this is a consensus based on working with clients. Moving on down, T. Hey man, what's going on? Glad to see you back in the channel. It's probably going to be gotten rid of. I think we just need to decimate the system, rebuild it, and this time think about the last 60 years and design it properly so it works the way it needs to work. I also think that the elderly need to be separated into a different system. Okay, there should be people that I think the elderly should be completely separated out of Section 8, that there should be an entire system for them that's not contingent on housing authorities, okay? Because at that point, if you worked all your life and you paid your taxes and you need to be able to leave them this, then you should not have to go through this drama, okay? Starting at 62. Second to that, I'd like to say that the disabled, those that genuinely have disabilities, I think there should be a separate cost for that. And I think the people that simply have a bad job and feel entitled to be able to get low income housing because they're struggling should be in that system, and it'll probably be a little harder. But we're pooling too many people together, and the ones that need it the most are having to struggle just as hard as the people that barely need it. And don't I, I fool you not with this. I get lots of people calling me. They want to utilize this program simply because they can. And I got to tell you, I'm not going to do that for people. Okay. Lying, deception, breaking federal laws, state laws, county laws. I'm not getting involved in that. And I will not solicit in any way for any client to do so. Now, if you're clever enough to make the law work for you, find loopholes, then that's legitimate. But as far as approaching this from a level of just flat out committing a crime, no. Sammy Joe, thank you for the $2. So, by the way, guys, in the live chat, you're able to donate money. I don't solicit that. It's simply there. If any of you watched a YouTube video when you have teenagers making games, that's how they make a little money. People are able to donate. I put it in my channel, and occasionally people donate money. And whenever y'all donate money that way, I use it for the care and benefit of my cats. If many of you watched a lot of those hundreds of videos, I think we're over 300 now, you'll see cats pop up, big pops, and many of them. So I use that money as a means to buy them different things, cat treats, and so on. These are cats that I care about and I rescue. We've all got to have something particular in life. Maybe you're a dog lover. Maybe you're a bird lover. My thing is cats. They don't mix well with other animals. And so I care for them. I rescue them. And I quite enjoy that. And I think a lot of our people that watch my videos, it was unintentional. They popped in the video one day, and y'all have been asking about them for quite a while now. So it's a big part of the channel now, and I get to brag about them a little bit. So moving back down, Brent C, why are they so different state by state? Well, first of all, I think Baltimore's running off a Commonwealth system, which is completely separate from everything. Also, political motivations can affect how housing authorities operate. Number two, the people that underwrite policies and procedures, there are different systems. So, as you can imagine, most housing authorities, they don't sit there in an office and create their own rules specifically, small amount of rules, but a lot of it's underwritten by companies like Nan and McKay. And Nan and McKay has got a large number of big states, but they're not the only one. So people that do this as a job. A company does it, and they write the policies and procedures. They turn it over to the housing authority. The housing authority may adjust some of that in there to make sure it meets their demographics and the amount of money and job and so on that's going out there. So that's why it's different. It's not a universal system. And we mustn't forget the United States is it may be a country, but we're a country with 50 little countries in it. So what we do in one side of the nation is completely different than the other, and it would be a lot like visiting Europe, Russia, and China. I can tell you, I've been to a lot of different states. We are different people from different areas. You go up in the upper East Coast, it's different. Okay, so I think that how we handle our policies and procedures, how housing authorities carry out their job, and how effectively you're able to get a voucher is strongly contingent on how low income housing is viewed from that housing authority and its political agendas for the city. Do they want that? Are they operable? New York's got a horrifying system that they tried to improve. So a lot of things to consider with that. Jackie M comments in our live chat. Hey Jay, what's the amount offered for a rental voucher based on? Well, every housing authority looks at AMI, area medium incomes. And once they look at that, then they usually, depending on the type of voucher funding you're receiving, they make their own calculations. So every housing authority does. They have a base calculation they use from HUD, but they do their own calculations for different housing authorities because the rents do change zip code to zip code. So I prefer not to give a straight answer for that because there's not one universal answer for it. Guys, if you want another calculation, you may request that at any time by going and calling your housing authority, or you may email the housing authority. You would want to address that to in-house counsel or their attorney, and then you can just put at the top entitled, and you may ask them one question at a time that you would like to know. This is an open public request. I would like to know what your policy and procedures are for the rent calculation. You're entitled to that information, okay? It's going to be different everywhere you go. Sammy Joe, hey, welcome back to the channel. My neighbor was abusing their kitten, and now she's mine. I'm working on the rest of the neighborhood cats. That's good. We have a warrior in the neighborhood. Y'all all know I don't like just rescuing people from homeless shelters. I also like rescuing these cats. So I'm always happy when you guys are watching these videos and you tell me about your pets and the great things you guys are doing out there to help them. As humans, we're responsible for the wildlife and these animals, and the treatment and care of them. If you're born without a mental center, that's fine. But for those of you that do have a moral center, then I would suggest that giving your pets a helping hand is always a good thing. Moving on from that, JG, we'll just call you JG because I'm bad with names. So he says, hey, finally caught you live. Yeah, man, excellent. Yeah, because I've been on here beating my gums for goodness, 35 minutes. Y'all know I can talk like the wind. I can sit here comfortably, almost motionlessly, and all you see is lip service. That's me. Look, I spend all day on the phone with clients. Plus, I make hour-long videos. After a while, you just get used to it. It's kind of like working at Pizza Hut 12 hours a day. You're just on the phone and you can talk like the wind. So, the nice part about me is when you watch other people, they got to pull out their notes because you always know when people are full of shit. They've got to read from all kinds of notes. They got to constantly think about what they're saying, and they certainly can't sit here for 35 minutes and verbatim U.S. Code Title 24 or talk about anything enigmatic. And they can't do it live either. They got to sit there, practice, steal whatever information they can find on YouTube. Then they get up, dressed up pretty, and then today they're going to be a Section 8 consultant, and tomorrow they're going to be a party clown, a specialist, and then the week after that they're going to be a fidget spinner expert. We got a lot of Section 8 consultants on YouTube, and I got to tell you, man, there's a sucker born every minute if you're going to take advice from fools. Um, I mean it in the best possible way. I get that people want to share information, but at least know what you're talking about. And most of these guys have never read an operational manual in their life. That's another thing, guys. If you're going to take advice from people, you'd want to make sure, because as we were mentioning, housing authorities, their policy procedures and so on, data manuals and all that, all of them are specific to the housing authority. So if you've nailed it for your city and your housing authority, and you really know it, it's only effective for your little city and your county. It's going to be a completely different game for each county. So for you to be able to do what I do, you would have to spend years, if not decades, addressing hundreds of housing authorities and then seeing all the different ways that things do play out. You can't just be an expert in one county with one housing authority. I've seen people in the housing authority, former employees, make videos on YouTube, and I think that's fantastic. It's great for their city, but the information is wildly not useful for anything else. So I always appreciate some of the good artists that are on YouTube that make videos about New York and Jersey. They're in the city. They mark the videos New York, and they really do actually are pretty good at their videos. So I just want to let y'all know I don't think everybody's a jerk on YouTube, but there's definitely some questionable people that make videos here. All right. Gale Resources, Jay is the real deal. We'll find out. When I take my last breath, whoever's in charge of the planet, the stars, and the moons, he or she or whatever it is will let me know whether I've done it good or done it bad, and we'll see. You know, will you leave this earth without having to worry? All right, guys. So what I'm going to tell you right now is, if y'all have questions about Section 8, low-income housing, affordable housing, the many names it goes by, if you've been discriminated against, if you have an issue with a housing authority, if you have an issue with moving your voucher, you're not sure what your voucher can do, whether it's tenant-based, whether it's project-based, or you have questions about Section 811, Section 202, now's the time to ask. Because if y'all don't ask the questions, I'm going to start wrapping this video up because it would be pointless other than me entertaining. And I'm not a very good entertainer, I don't think so. So I'll wait a minute to see if anybody has any questions, and then after that, I'm going to wrap it up. So in the meantime, while we're waiting, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Arkansas. Now, as y'all know, I incorporate plenty into my videos other than Section 8 and low-income housing. We already talked about the cats. They're my little Hollywood stars. Be moving the office to Arkansas around August 20th or 21st. I'm leaving for Arkansas and the Ozarks on the 25th this month, next week on Monday. And I will be there till Wednesday. As many of you know, I own a forest out there, and I also bought an additional property, more or less at auction. And I do not know if the house actually exists. So I took a gamble. There's supposed to be a 1,700 square foot home there. It was built in the 50s, and it's a place that me and the cats can reside while I build on the property in the Ozarks. Okay. I got the property for a song and a dance. It means, in other words, I got that in that chunk of land, the house in the chunk of land it's on, for less than 10K. You're not going to buy houses for that amount very often. Anyways, so I'm going down there, and then if it's there, and I'm going to be recording it because I bought a camcorder and an inexpensive one today that should be sufficient enough to show y'all a perspective of that. If it is in fact there, then I will show y'all everything that I see. I hope that drug users have not taken it over, and I hope that it's not been burned down or it's been trashed. But if it is, it is. And I will know Monday around probably 1 o'clock in the afternoon if I just made the worst little investment of my life. If it is, then oh well, it shit happens. What can you do? I took the gamble, and that's what happens. If it's there and needs repairs, then that's fine. Look, it ain't like I paid 100K for this or 200K or 300. It's just what it is. If it is there, then it was the best investment of a lifetime. I don't care if it's got a bad roof or not. If you get a 1,700 square foot home with all the walls on it and a roof, yeah, I can easily get my money back, many times over for that. So, and I'm going to be drilling the locks and all that out there, and I'll have that on video if there are locks and so on, and probably a few broken windows. We'll see. And then I'm going to take a trip up to the Ozarks and show y'all the forest. And this has not been felded. It means all the trees are up. There's nothing but crickets. It's a dirt road. No fire, no police, no nothing. I have a utility pole in the forest. That is it. There's no going down to Subway, no going down to Burger King, none of that stuff. It is on the tip of a national forest in the Ozarks. It is you, the black bears, the wolves, and of course my wild pack of cats. Brent C., thank you so much. I see you picked the eye shocker yellow. Thanks for the $10. So that'll be used for the kitty cats out there in Arkansas. Um, and Brent goes on to ask, where are the better metros for renting to voucher users? Um, you know what, guys? I'm going to recommend Texas. I mean, not because I live here. I'm going to recommend it because it has several features. One, the housing market is not overheated here. Number two, we have like four of the largest cities in the nation. Okay, so you have Dallas, you have Fort Worth, you have Houston, you have Austin. These are all cities in the millions. Okay, let's say number three, the it's easier to get things here, whether it's a voucher or containment care, because we don't people are working in this state. There's lots of jobs, and it's rents have always been low. Hell, 10 years ago, you could still get an apartment for around $500. That's unheard of. A lot of you guys are living up there in Jersey and New York, or you're living in room closets, and you're paying thousands. You can still buy a little condo out here for 30 grand. Okay, so I'm going to recommend Texas as being one of the major places. And even if it didn't work out in one city, within 4 hours you can be to all four metropolitan cities, and we have exasperated, gigantic suburbs. It's the suburbs when you drive in Houston, it take you an hour to get to the other end of that. So I don't know where all y'all are from, but when I say you drive, you're going to be driving. You'd be exiting your state by the time you got to the end of Houston. It's a good hour drive, hour and a half, possibly 2 hours to get to the other end of that. We have gigantic suburbs, and that's just Houston. Then you have, like I said, Dallas, Fort Worth, so on. Beyond that, I would say that there are states a lot of people are not considering. Colorado is a great state if you can handle the altitudes. There's not a big issue, in my opinion, out there for that. Also, besides there, I think that Utah's fair and reasonable. I think that Idaho's suffering a little bit. I would advise the lower southern states because we still have a lot of problems with jobs down south. So I'd say your Midwest is probably your biggest bet. I would avoid the East Coast entirely because New York, New Jersey, Washington, Boston, and so on. That's just too much. Chicago, I think, is a great place as well. One thing that's shocking is Chicago. I get less clients from Chicago. Now, think about this for a minute. Chicago is what, the third largest city in the country, but they've got it right over there. Yeah, it's not easy, but compared to almost every other city out here, I rarely get clients from there because most people actually get what they need in Chicago. I wouldn't recommend California at all. I'm barely recommending Florida and New Mexico and Arizona, just way overdone. Washington State, Oregon is pretty good if you like the politics out there. Again, some of you are very political, so you make sure you move to where you would feel good. Montana might be all right, but it's not for everybody. So right now, I just think if I had a number one spot, I would say it'd be Texas because if it didn't work in one city, hell, you've got four more to choose from, and we simply don't have a housing crisis here. I mean, we got problems. I mean, the rent's going up, but it's nothing like the rest of the nation. I hope that helped you out, Brent. If you got more questions, man, you can always shoot me an email. Most of you guys have got my phone number. As long as you call it a normal hour, I'm usually pretty respectful about that. So I'm gonna move down to Malcolm Miles. I'm in PG County, Maryland, and I was trying to find housing for myself and my two sons. This is a live comment. I'm disabled with a limited income. I can get any type of housing. Can I get any type of housing ASAP? Well, Mr. Miles, well, Mr. or Mrs. Miles, so I'm not clear about that. But let me say this: there's a considerable number of things that I would probably want to ask you. Disability is an important factor with being able to get housing. Age is being a veteran, and there's many, many other things. So I don't have enough information to give you a reasonable answer as to that. Okay. I also don't know. I haven't checked recently for your specific county to see what the housing authority has open or continuum of care, and I've not looked at subsidies for that county recently. So I think that conversation, to give you a very good answer, would be best served if we spoke by phone or by email. So I would have the time to look into it. I know you guys think I'm a walking telephone book or at least a database, and for the most part, I am. You do it long enough and you get a lot of information. I'm pretty good. But trying to keep track of thousands of counties in the nation month to month and how we change so rapidly now, it's become difficult. And so sometimes I'm not always be able to give the most sophisticated answers you'll like. That's why I say just email me. I'm pretty respectful about that. As long as you don't send me 100 emails, wrap up your questions in one. Don't write a life story. Just ask me the quintessentials, and then I try to work with you. Brent C, Atlanta, Georgia here. Atlanta, which is DeKalb. And Atlanta, I think, is a great. You know what? Actually, I'm going to mention Atlanta too. I'm going to mention Georgia. I'm going to mention Georgia. They may not have the biggest cities outside of Atlanta, but I think that you have a lot of good cities that are close by. You've got Augusta, you got Macon, and so on. And those are not population dense cities, not like Houston. But I think that Georgia, in some ways, has done a pretty good job. Georgia's not always on my radar as far as a problematic system for housing. So I think that my compliments do go to Georgia, but don't construe that as there not being any issues. Certainly they do have them, but I'm just saying that is not on my radar as being a problematic state. Sincerely blessed comments. Hello, I'm trying to find a housing in Houston. I'm disabled and I'm on disability. I keep getting the runaround concerning Section 8. I got to tell you, sincerely blessed. That theme that you're talking about, getting the run out. That's what everybody gets. You just joined the party, not getting any answers and dealing with housing authorities. You're learning a lesson that many people have already been through. It's a perilous system. It's hard. It's difficult. It takes a while, and trying to get a straight answer is hard. A lot of people want more than one answer too. Nobody likes having to search through the depths of hell of YouTube and watch 25 videos to answer two questions. Nobody wants to read through 38 different websites to talk about absolute fucking nonsense just to deliver one answer. And that's what a lot of you go through. Sad part is on YouTube and Google is a lot of the information, when you actually find it, that stuff was written over 10 years ago. It was for a specific area, and it might have even been plagiarized. So in other words, the information you're getting is complete garbage. Look, guys, you guys do not need to hire me or section8consulting.com. Okay, I want to tell you guys that. I offer consulting. Nobody's going to hire me. Information is free. The problem I think a lot of you are going to run into is where most of it's delivered is through 211 and 311. You would have a better chance of calling. You probably have a better chance calling an ER and getting somebody in the phone line than you would with 211 and the 311. They're just not very good at it, and it's stressful. I get it, and especially when you need these services quickly. So I'm going to just say that sincerely blessed. If you have a modest amount of questions, I'm happy to answer those by email. And I think you can find links to me, my website, and so on. And I'm willing to answer some of those things for you if you think that it'd be beneficial. Also, you should consider all the counties around Houston. You should consider areas out of Conroe. So you have Brazoria and Sugarland and so on. There's a lot of counties. I think Houston Housing Authority is closed. Moving back down, Brent C says, "Thank you for the answers and talking to you soon. I look forward to it, Mr. Brent." JG says, "Any general suggestions on finding housing out of state?" My most general, such as my big, there's really no magic with that. I often get people asking me about that, the housing search. Whenever it's possible, try to include a housing broker. And they may not be an expert in Section 8, but renting is renting. The best resources I have known to use is affordable housing online. And I'm going to put a link up real quick. Bear with me a minute. I know I've got it here somewhere. This is the number one site for finding subsidies from properties. Now, just as a disclaimer, even though that's I believe it's a federally subsidized website, they're a federal subcontractor or approved by HUD. Roughly 30% of the people on there are scamming or just flat out lying about the property. Due diligence is required when you deal with any website. I don't give a damn if HUD is in partner with them or not. You still must do your diligence. Why? Because people that want to do the wrong thing will always find their way into honest system. That's why you have good and bad apps on your phone, despite billion-dollar companies trying to keep them off. So just you do due diligence if you're going to utilize that. Facebook Marketplace is a great place, but if you do find interested landlords there that are marketing that, you need to be able to meet them in the property. They must be able to. You're not paying in cash, no money orders, no gift cards. They can either pull you to office and they can put it through a credit card reader, or what they're running is a scam, and you should call 911. Okay, I don't recommend Craigslist. That is the Wild West, and virtually none of those properties on there are real. So I would say watch out. So unfortunately, getting a voucher is what's complicated. The housing search is complicated too, but there's not an easy path with that I've ever found outside of just searching, calling, and spending weeks making hundreds of calls. It's just not easy. So, all right, guys, we talked about a lot of things. I think we covered Build Back America in its intensity and whether or not it'll pass. I think we've talked about housing authorities and looked at the perspective from both sides of how it might play out dealing with housing authority employees, overheated housing market. We talked about the cats and moving my office to Arkansas out in the Ozarks. And we've also tried to answer a bunch of questions here. And it looks like the results from the poll that I decided to run for the first time in this video says the 91% of people do believe that it's a good video. 9% believe it's okay, and nobody believes it's bad. So I appreciate that. Even if y'all put it all bad, it wouldn't matter. Most of you know I don't live my life by reviews, and I've got a lot. I've got over 143 for our website, and I'm working on Google. So I've got 143. Matter of fact, I'll just show you guys real quick. But yeah, I don't live and breathe that because that's when you allow people to take control of you and your business. When you start worrying about people's reviews and nonsense. I appreciate anybody that leaves them, but my life does not hang by it. I know what I can do, and I know how long I've been doing it. So, anyways, yeah, that's just a review site there. So, all right, guys, I'm going to wrap this up because now I'm just more or less rambling. And the next video I'm going to make, for those of you that are taking a personal interest in things that are personal for me, why don't y'all join me in 2 days? Let's see, today is Monday, so I'll say Thursday. And we're going to talk a little bit more about Arkansas and the cats and all the good stuff. It's always good to talk to a creator and see him do more than just his job. That's what's interesting. If I knew more about the people I was watching, I might be more inclined to actually believe some of the things they were saying. So if you'd like to get a small sampling of me as a person, Thursday will be a little bit about that. And I'm still willing to entertain questions about Section 8 and so on. So for now, guys, I've really enjoyed seeing y'all. And hello, Daniel. I see you showed up for the channel. He's our number one commenter. And Diana Deborah, I meant what was happening when you exit Section 8. Unfortunately, I'm ending the video, Deborah, and so I won't be able to answer that now. So I'm going to wish y'all farewell, and I'll see y'all again Thursday. All right. Bye bye.